Welcome to Train Signal. This is Lab 4 in the Active Directory course on Server 2003. In this course, we're going to take a look at Active Directory from the user's perspective, or even from a management perspective if you're the administrator. And some of the things we're going to look at include publishing resources, searching through Active Directory, and then some other general Active Directory usage, including Active Directory queries, and also selecting groups within Active Directory. So let's get started by connecting over to our server, server 1, and this machine's located at the IP address of 192.168.1.201. So we're going to connect over just as we have in earlier labs in this course. And the first thing we're going to focus on is creating a couple shared folders, then publishing these folders and adding keywords to them and showing you how this works. Then we'll take a look at it from the end user's perspective and see what they can actually do with this. So to start this off, let's just go ahead and create some dummy folders here on our local C drive on server 1. Okay, so here I'm going to create one folder named public. Okay, and I'm going to create one more folder named, let's call it private. Okay, and just the general consensus here is this public folder is meant to be viewed by everybody, the general public. The private folder is set up just for network administrators to use. Okay, and we'll kind of talk about this more here in a second. So first I'm going to share this, and I'm going to share my private folder. Okay, so I got both of these folders shared, and now what we're going to do is go into Active Directory users and computers. Okay, and before we do that, let's actually focus on this for a second here. Now, what we've done so far in sharing these folders, we have made them available over the network. Okay, our public folder here and our private folder here. These are now available over the network. So if I were to go back over to the XP machine, okay, what I can do is I can browse through my network places, or I can go to a run command and put in the UNC path, server 1 / and you see I have all these different choices here for directories that are shared on server 1. Okay, well, here's public, here's private. I can actually go ahead and open this up by using a UNC path here. Okay, in the UNC path, if you're not familiar with it, that's Universal Naming Convention / the name of the server / the name of the share that you're connecting to. So server 1 is the name of the server, and public is the name of the shared folder. Okay, so we can actually connect to this right now. We don't need to do anything else. The difference is, though, is maybe our users are going to be using Active Directory for their searching. And more as we get further into Active Directory in Server 2003 and then the next release within Windows, we're trying to steer towards using Active Directory for even some more of our day-to-day common tasks. Okay, we'll look at that closer here in a second as well. So we connect back over to Server 1 then, and what I want to go into is showing you then the Active Directory Users and Computers tool. We're going to go look at how we can actually publish a shared folder to the Active Directory. Okay, we need to pick a location for this shared folder. And it's not too critical as far as where we're placing this shared folder, but I would say that it really comes down to how you want to organize things. So if you're setting up if you're publishing a shared folder and this is going to be used by your North Carolina marketing team, well, it might be a good idea then to place the folder here by just going to right-click, New, and then Shared Folder. In this particular case, we've got this public folder, and everybody's going to be using it. We're going to be putting public information in there, so we could place it anywhere in any of these different OUs. However, just to make it simple, we'll place it right up here at the domain level. Okay, so it's just going to fall down here and be one of these objects that we see here. So to do so, we just right-click benandbrady.com, go to New, and then go down to Shared Folder. And it bears repeating here that this is not creating a new shared folder, but we're publishing a already existing shared folder. Okay, we're publishing this shared folder to Active Directory. The reason why is because now we're going to be able to search for the shared folder within Active Directory. We're going to demonstrate that after we create this, so don't fret if you're not quite catching on. So shared folder, we talked about this I think in the 2000 video as well, but I'm not a big fan of this interface. I'd like to have a browse button here so we could at least go out and browse our shares and add that here manually. So you are forced to know your share name, which we can find out, but it just makes it maybe a little bit more time consuming. And here you see our UNC path again. Server 1 is the computer name. Public is the name of this share. Okay, and you can name it anything you want, but of course it should be descriptive. So we're going to call it public folder. Okay, so right here you see that we have a shared folder here that's marked here under type, and then we've got the name that we specified before. If we right-click this and go to Properties, we do have several tabs up here. These are fairly non-eventful. Manage by, you can set who the actual manager of this particular folder is. Not a big deal. Object gives you general information as far as where it's located, what object class it exists in, when it was created. Okay. Security. This is this security that affects this actual Active Directory object. So what this is basically saying here is, for example, the authenticated users have the ability to read this particular folder. So that means if they do a search, they will find this public folder when they do a search for published folders. Okay? It does not, however, mean that authenticated users have access to everything in this public folder. Okay, what I mean by that, there is a difference between these permissions here, which are set on this Active Directory object. This is just giving you the ability to find the public folder. If we go to the public folder itself, okay, we'll just do that to make it even simpler. This public folder has permissions that, I guess, represent the actual folder itself, or the file itself, depending upon what we're looking at. If you look here, these are the NTFS permissions that affect what a user can or cannot do to this file. Notice that authenticated users is not even on this list. So you see that we have a totally different ACL, access control list, which is just the collection of all these entries. We have a totally different ACL here than we do over here within Active Directory when we take a look at the security permissions. Okay? So let's sum this up in case this got confusing all of a sudden. NTFS permissions on the Active Directory object control what a user or group can actually do to this Active Directory object. Can they see it? Can they delete it? Can they manage it? Okay? Once you've accessed the Active Directory object, this is kind of a shortcut pointer then out to the real folder. Okay? And our permissions that we see here, these control what the user or group can actually do with this folder and the files within it. And that's, pretty important. Okay, so let's close this down and then go back into Active Directory users and computers one last time. And now what we're going to do is take a look at one feature we haven't explored yet, and that's down below here, and that's called keywords. Now with keywords, what you can do is specify multiple keywords that your users may use when they're searching for these shared folders. So typically what you're going to use here, things that are very common or similar to public. So you could use things like, type out the full name, public folder, common folder. I'm just brainstorming stuff right here. This may or may not make sense to you, but another way of going through this is, we have three different departments, marketing, sales, and accounting. So another way we could do this is just tell those particular users that anytime they're looking for a folder that relates to them, just type in their department, marketing, sales, or accounting. So then any folder we want them to be able to find, we could just type in their group. So I type in marketing, and in this case we'll assume that everybody should be able to find the public folder, so we'll just type in all of these here. Okay, so fairly straightforward with how this works. We click OK, and now what we'll do is let's go take a look from the XP side of things and see how we can utilize this feature. Okay, so we're sitting back on XP1, and first thing we need to do is go to Start, and then open up My Network Places. And from My Network Places, what we're going to do is search the Active Directory. Okay, and searching the Active Directory pulls up this Find Users and Contacts and Groups tool. Okay, and from here what we want to do, let's drop down this menu here and then choose exactly what we're going to be searching for, and that's shared folders. Now, once we have shared folders selected, this is probably fairly obvious, just named and keywords. So this is what the folder would be named. So if we put in here marketing, because we're looking for a marketing folder, you can see that nothing shows up down below, and that's because there are no folders named marketing that have been shared, published within Active Directory. If we type in public, however, we see that there is a folder that's published within Active Directory that, doesn't have to be the full name like we see here, but it's just part of the name, just public that you see. Okay, if we take that public and we move it down here to keywords, let's first clear it. Okay, so we've got public down under keywords. Look, it comes up here again, and the reason that we see that, a couple of reasons. Well, one, public folder is part of the keyword, so it pops up when we see that. We can also find this if we use any of the other keywords that we specified there. So if I type in sales, I'm a salesperson, I'm looking for all the folders that relate to me, I might type in sales, click Find Now, and any published folder that has sales as one of the keywords is going to pop up here, and now I can pick between the however many folders, 3, 5, 7, that the salespeople might be accessing. So it just is a way of simplifying the process of finding the folders that relate to you, and that would be instead of going through My Network Places, okay, browsing, clicking, finding the right server. There might be 10, 20 servers, then finding the right directory, all this other jazz here. Okay. Now the last thing we want to show with this, with shared folders, is keep in mind that we have all of these shared folders here, AD, Manage, Private, Sysval, but if we go down here to that same tool, okay, I'll have to open it up again, the Search Active Directory tool, let's see what happens when I do a search for Private. Okay, nothing shows up in this search tool, and keep in mind why. The reason it doesn't show up is because we did not publish this particular folder in Active Directory. Okay, if we want this to be able to be searched for in Active Directory, it's real simple. We just go back over here again and just go through this exact same process that we did a second ago. New shared folder, path to that folder, okay, //server1 /private, that's the name of the folder that's shared. I click OK, and if we go back over to our XP machine now and search for private, still don't get it. Let's give it a second here. I didn't really think about it. It's possible, though, we just added that. Maybe we're searching the other piece within Active Directory. Now, here's the other thing, too. We're searching for the wrong thing. Shared folders, private. Okay, now it shows up. So same concept here, but the folder must be published in Active Directory before we can actually do a search for it. Okay, and that's what we saw here. Okay, connecting back over then to our server one machine, one last thing I want to show you. Let's say that I want to publish another folder here. Okay, and I specify //server1 /marketing. Okay, so I click OK, and it accepts this. It adds this here. The problem is this directory doesn't exist. So this could come up, you may type in a wrong name or have a typo here, and it looks like it works, but you should test it out, because this directory, I mean, if people try to connect to it, they'll be able to search for it, but when it comes time to actually connecting to it and accessing the resources out of this folder, they're not going to be able to, because this directory just doesn't exist. Okay, watch what happens when I right-click on it and then I go to Open. Okay, it tells me it can't find it. If I right-click on one of these other folders, though, and go to Open, it opens the folder up. Okay, there's nothing in there right now, so that's why you don't see anything. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. This is fairly useless. I mean, somebody can do a search for this. It will pull up, but then when they open it up, I mean, what's the point? It doesn't go anywhere. Okay, and that's because this UNC name's not valid. Okay, next thing we're going to look at, I just want to show you contacts. Okay, it's one more thing we can publish in Active Directory, and this can be maybe somewhat useful if you wanted to share a common contact database amongst many different people. So once again, we need to pick a location for these, and maybe we even create a separate OU and call it contacts or something. Because when we right-click and then go down to New Contact, what we're able to do is specify a user, somebody outside of the company, basically, who you may want to contact. Okay, and it shows you up here. This could be like a, take the place of a Rolodex, for example. Let's use Jimmy Smith. Okay, and display name is fine as Jimmy Smith. And we click OK, and we see that it adds a contact right here. Okay, and just this little Rolodex symbol. Be aware we couldn't really put much in there, but if we do open up Jimmy Smith, we've got complete information. So, if we had a data entry person entering stuff, we could populate this with telephone number and email, all of this information here. Okay, and like I said before, what this is really useful for is to replace a Rolodex. It's kind of a digital Rolodex. These are not Active Directory user accounts, however. Okay, so don't be mistaken by this. Jimmy Smith does not have a user account to log on to the benandbrady.com domain. You can't assign security permissions to Jimmy Smith. He's just merely a contact here. Okay, so just to give you a brief feel for what you can do with this. Now, couple more things we'll finish up with. One of these is new to Active Directory in Server 2003, and that's the Saved Queries folder up top. And what this is good for, we're back to kind of the administration side, but as an administrator, you may do some queries within your network. And to open this up, just right-click on it and then go down to New Query. If you're not familiar with that term, it's just another term for a search. Okay, and we'll wait to name it until we know what exactly we're going to be doing. Okay, so what exactly this query is going to be for. So first thing we want to do is decide where we're going to be searching from. Where do we start this from? And if we click Browse here, notice that we can start at the domain level, or we can get down a little bit deeper. Maybe we want to start searching just in the North Carolina OU. Okay, so whatever you want there. I'm going to leave the default, which is just at the root of the domain. Include subcontainers. So do you just want to search within the domain? And that would mean then we're only searching right within this here. Okay, not all this stuff here, but if I were able to select this, it would show 10, 15 different pieces there that we might want to search through. Define the query. This will be the most important piece, but this allows you to do a search for whatever you're looking for. Are you looking for all the user accounts that start with the letter A? Okay, for whatever reason. Maybe you're doing some sort of reporting or whatever it is. Okay, anybody who is a certain user. Okay, so you could basically, refine your searches based upon information like that. And we can do this for users, computers, groups, as you see here. And another cool thing you can do is search for disabled accounts. So if you want to know all the accounts that are disabled within your network, let's get rid of this. We can do this and then click OK, and it'll show us all the different accounts that are going to be disabled. So we'd want to name this appropriately. If I can spell it. Okay, disabled account search. I'm still missing an O up here. Okay, and you can see this shows us all the accounts that are disabled. And what's nice about this is you can create a query and it stays here. So the next time I want to come back in here again, I don't have to go through all that jazz as far as defining this. I can just pop this open up my saved queries, click on disabled account search, and it goes out and it finds all the objects that match this criteria. Okay, let me show you what I mean by this. What if some other account becomes disabled as well? We'll disable Bob Hayes' account. So I disable his account, as you see here. Now, ideally, when I open this up, Bob Hayes should show up here. Okay, well, to do this, what we're going to have to do is basically refresh this query, and once it's refreshed, we do see that now Bob Hayes' user account shows up as one of the disabled accounts. Okay, and that's what it's handy for, is to use these same queries over and over and over again. Another query you can run is to actually show old logins. So let's go ahead and go to here, and I'll give you an idea of what we can do. Well, if we want to know somebody who has not logged on for, let's say, 60 days. So you've got a whole, boatload of users in here. Let's say 1,000 users, 2,000 users. So it's kind of hard to monitor, who's doing what. And you really don't want to go through user accounts one by one. But we can run a query to see who's not logged on in the last 60 days. Because if a user account hasn't logged on for 60 days, it's a real good idea that person's, real possibility that person's not with the company anymore. Or maybe you created some user accounts and you're testing stuff out and you left them enabled. Now, the problem here, well, it's a security breach. You might have set it up, and maybe you even set up one of those user accounts to be an administrator while you're testing some stuff out, and that account's just sitting there, possibly even with a blank password. Okay, so that's obviously not a good thing. So it's fairly simple. Just put, what we have here, click OK, and we need to name this query. So the query name would be anything you want, but we'll just call it old logon. And when we click OK here, you see that it doesn't display anything then on the right-hand side. And the reason for this is because we don't have any accounts that have not logged on for 60 days or greater. Okay, all the accounts here have been, newly created, so there's no issues like that. Okay, but in a, live Active Directory environment, it's very possible that you have accounts that have been created that will show up here that, meet the criteria that's defined within this query. Okay, let's take a look at one last thing here that we can do in Active Directory. And this is something that's fairly common to do, but it's kind of helpful sometimes, especially if you have a lot of users or groups, whatever you might want to be looking at. You can use this feature up here called Filter Options, which kind of will allow you to just select the things you want to look at instead of all the other stuff. Okay, so if you're focusing in on, let's say, user accounts or groups, let's just say we want to look at just our groups, we can select groups here, put down the maximum number of items we want to display per folder, and then click OK. Now, it still shows us all of our organizational units that you see here, but if we open up these pieces here, we only see groups that should be listed. We open up any of these, okay, and let's go to a place where there's actually users and groups, and that's what we see right here. If I go to, for example, my North Carolina OU and open up accounting, notice that no users are being shown right now, and that's because we have a filter that's activated as it tells us right here. Okay, if we're going to go back up here again and modify this, just go up here and go to Show All Types of Objects once again, and you'll see that all the different objects that we have can now be viewed. Okay, so you have several different choices on the filter. Fairly self-explanatory, I think, as far as what's going on here. Most of these are just the different things we can create within our Active Directory. Okay, that wraps up Lab 4 and also our Active Directory and Server 2003 training course. Thank you for choosing TrainSignal.